You know what really makes us mad? Is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers? Welcome to Punk Lotto Pod. I am your co-host, Justin Hensley.
And I am your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
And this is the show where we assign our guests a year and they choose one punk, hardcore, emo, or punk-adjacent album from that year for us to talk about. This week we are Sans guest again.
Yes, this is happening often.
Yeah,
lately.
Which we figured it would based on schedules and everything, with you working a lot during the week and me going to school and our guests' particular schedules. This one just wound up, we were gonna schedule something and didn't have, we kind of left it open to move a schedule adjustment that this still didn't wind up happening this week. That got pushed to next, or 2 weeks from now, so it'll all wash out in the end. But yeah, we're solo again, which means we're reverting to original format, which is we use a random number generator and rate your music punk charts and choose an album at random to talk about.
Yeah, this is the uncut edition of Punk Lotto Pod, where we can give our unfettered opinions.
No worries that our guests are going to get mad that we didn't like something. Though in all reality, there's not been much of that. So
Yeah.
No concerns there. Yeah, this is the old school format. But of course, we have our good old plugs to do up the top. So you can head over to our Patreon. For $1 a month, you have access to all of our bonus audio. This week we did a Last FM 5x5.
Yeah, just a little recap of everything that we have collectively listened to this week. We were very efficient on this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just have to be a little bit more focused when we do those. And then we also do all sorts of other bonus audio over there. Then that is patreon.com/punklautopod. We have all sorts of social medias you can follow. That's Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We're all at punklautopod. We have an email address. It's punklautopod@gmail.com. A voicemail that is 202-688-PUNK. A Substack, which is punklautopod.substack.com. I think that's all our socials. Some of you may have noticed that I have recently started a second podcast because I obviously didn't have enough going on in my life as it is, so I decided to add another thing. But I am now the co-host of the podcast Around the Ring. This is basically the fourth incarnation of the show. There's been different hosts throughout the years since that show started, and I am currently co-hosting it with Steve Long. He's the originator of that show. Our good friend Dave Brown used to be on there as well, and it's kind of like bounced around hands. And so Steve and I were talking a lot online about wrestling, and we were like, he wanted to revive the podcast, and wanted me on as a co-host. So that's what we're doing now. It's called Around the Ring. We're pretty focused on AEW wrestling at the time, but we also talk about New Japan, Ring of Honor stuff as well. Some major news in the WWE as well, but not really. We don't really watch that company. But yeah, if you're a wrestling fan, check us out. That's where you can get us on all the you can get us on all the podcast apps. Now, all that's out of the way. You have anything to plug, buddy?
Not yet.
Some promising things there.
Yeah.
Exciting there. But yeah, we'll let you know when that's going. But yeah, we're going to go into regular format. So before we get into the album we're talking about today, we got the year 2016. Kind of chose 2016 because we've yet to do it as a year. I think maybe we did like an EP. Oh, that's right. We did that Lush EP from 2016. That was like the only time we touched on 2016. And that was just because it was just shoegaze. That was for our My Bloody Valentine's Day episodes. So there wasn't a year restriction on those. But yeah, we've never done a full dive. So we were like, well, let's take this opportunity because nobody wants to choose recent time. It's 5 years ago?
Yeah, I'm surprised that people don't. Because I feel like a lot of this stuff would be like pretty fresh in your memory.
I think our guests like to choose things that have meant a lot to them for a long time, which I understand that. And honestly, looking at this list, I don't know what I would have picked. I mean, I don't know. I probably would have found something pretty easily. But what happened in 2016?
Everything that was previously called punk, everyone decided to call power pop.
Yeah. This probably is the beginning of that, right?
Yeah. We're on, whatever wave of emo at this point.
Yeah, let's see. If we're currently in the 5th wave, then this would have been, what, the 4th? Maybe. Yeah, don't they call it the wave, that post-hardcore thing? That's basically considered 4th wave. What is 3rd wave? I thought 3rd wave was like the early 2000s. This is I don't want to go down now. Which wave is this?
Yeah, we don't want to get into that. Yeah. Some notable cancellations stemming from this year.
Yeah, actually a couple. One fairly recent from a guy that we were like, he was bad already. Why are we associated, unfortunately, on that Iggy Pop record? Certain, I won't name their name, but an alt-country emo band that got canceled, kind of, in a weird way, but also they're still around putting out records.
Yeah. I don't know why everyone decided to give them a redemption arc. But
I think it was how it was. The reporting was too suspicious for some people to be like, well, we can't have this band anymore. So whatever. Regardless, fuck them. It's a weird.
Yeah. It's really hard to talk about what I was listening to this year. I'm really not coming up with much. Like, I didn't really like that. I didn't really like that AJJ record that came out that year.
The Bible 2.
It really didn't connect with me.
Pup released The Dream Is Over.
That's what I would pick. I think that's what I would pick. If I were the guest on the show, I would have to go with that one, because I'm not coming up with anything like really deep here to talk about. I mean, maybe you could talk about that Zayo record.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about Zayo on our Patreon, but yeah, this was the Well-Intentioned Virus year. I mean, I would probably pick that Joyce Manor record, Cody, just to kind of like see what the deal with that one was. I missed that one. I didn't really listen to it. We got criticized for being like, what's your deal with not liking Joyce Manor? And I don't really have a legit explanation for what I don't like about that band, when I did like some of the early stuff. So,
I don't know. I mean, I didn't connect with what I heard and didn't spend the time on it. I don't know.
Descendants
Just know
released
that they're really big.
Descendants released Hypercaphium Spazonate, which was a big deal at the time. Though I think Descendants fans really like that record, like hardcore Descendants fans, like the people who are like, listen to them outside of their 20s, really like that record. I didn't. I did like Ninth and Walnut, and I do like Cool to Be You, and Everything Sucks. So I'm not outright writing them off, but we've talked about Descendants enough on the show in the past.
Yeah, I don't think I listened to that one. I listened to the new one, but I didn't listen to that one.
Yeah.
A notable reunion record. I do remember Planes Mistaken for Stars put out that record Pray, that I think people were promptly disappointed with. If I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think people wanted them to be like their early material, and they shifted far away from that sound like a long time ago. So like, why were they gonna come back and do the early sound? They would just pick up where they left off. Mannequin Pussy released Romantic. That's probably the first time I remember seeing their name, really. I spent a lot of time with these charts this week, just like sampling things that I never listened to, and you can hear us talk about those on the Patreon. We'll plug that 5 more times today. But like, I remember going through these, I was like, I'm having a hard time finding something I want to listen to. Like, I really don't want to listen to Polar Similar by Norma Jean. Did we see them around that record, or was it the one before?
Well, we saw them on the Oh God, the Aftermath tour.
Yeah, it was the Oh God tour. What record was it around? It might have been after Polar Similar, I think, but before.
It was
Hail.
after. Yeah.
Yeah. that's a band like I also like gave up on and stopped checking stuff out, that if I came back to it would probably like it a little better than I did. But
everything I've heard by them is like, I don't dislike it when I hear it, as far as like their recent records, but they don't do a lot for me. So I don't really come back to them. There's that Sect record. That's a pretty cool one.
yeah, good buddy Grant, who runs Bitter Melody, did an 8-track for Sect, a couple of Sect releases, I think, right? And a Knife, which I love. Yeah, Sioux Falls did Rot Forever. I remember that record was like really, really, really well regarded. People liked that band a lot. They did a name change because they took into some consideration that the Lakota people don't really like the word Sioux. So they went with a name change and became Strange Ranger.
Yeah.
And they're not as good anymore. That happens a lot. Who was the other one to do that? State Lines. They stopped being State Lines, became Oso Oso, and they're not as good anymore. Or did they actually become a different band? I don't remember. You know, it's funny. I was like, surely I was writing down on the internet my favorite records of the year during this time period. So like I went and found the old figureheads of pop, where I had that year, I think the site had already been pretty inactive for a while. So I just threw up a top 100 releases of 2016. You want to know what number 1 was?
What?
Mother Country Motherfuckers.
Oh.
The Sarah Kirsch posthumous release that came out like right at the very end of the year too.
Oh yeah, that's what I would pick.
Yeah. Weirdly though, my number 2, I was like, what? I put down Marathon States, I Want a Warning. Does anyone know who Marathon States is?
No.
I do. It's Jason Thin of the Chinkies and Short Round. He did this little he got basically the rhythm section of Hard Girls to play on the record. And so it's very much like Hard Girls type, Asian man, mid 2010s sounding record. And I re-listened to it this week and I was like, this is really good. I should come back to this more often. It's just funny that I made it number 2. The Super Weeks released Better Heavens.
I was about to say that one.
Adult Magic released their self-titled EP.
John Kate released Winter Wheat.
Mm-hmm. Kitty Cat Fan Club did songs about cats. Yeah, it's like, even like my top stuff, I'm like, that I like that Dog Breath record, and I like that Exquisites record. That was a really strong year for Asian Man records. That Chandeliers record.
Neurosis put out Fires Within Fires. That's definitely one that I listened to. I did a review of that record for New Noise magazine. Which you can probably still go read.
Yeah, that actually kind of matches up with our album, too, because there's a mention there. Oh, Bob Mould's Patch the Sky was that year. That's a good one. And Toy Guitars Moved Like a Ghost. Like, there's some really, really good stuff.
Is that when we saw Bob?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Speaking of seeing Bob, I am about to see Bob next weekend.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it's looking at it, it's not a year that I'm like, wow, what a year. But there's a lot of good stuff. Like, there's always good stuff, no matter what year it is. Maybe they're just not as well-known albums. I definitely was not listening to what most other people were really talking about that year. I feel like most of those bands got canceled, though, in the time since then. So,
yeah. I definitely listened to... There's quite a few records that I listened to like once or twice from this year that didn't... Ghostland put out Difficult Loves. That's a really good one.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's a Dangerous record that year, too.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of stuff from, like, the next record from a band that you already really like. But then otherwise, I was just kind of listening to a lot of the same stuff from 2015. Like, the stuff I really liked from 2015, and even a lot of the stuff that I really liked from 2014 was still in pretty heavy rotation. And then otherwise, I was just listening to a lot of, like, Bruce Springsteen records.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, just, like, spending a lot of time with old favorites.
Yeah. I mean, I did find a couple things that I actually really like now that I didn't listen to back then, that I was kind of like, that's weird. Why was no one recommending this to me back then? But, yeah, it's...
Here's one I listened to at least once. Pay to Live by Geometers.
Hey, that was on my list.
I interviewed them for New Noise.
Nice.
This was that time period. The end of 2016. I listened to the Abbott record that came out that year.
Pears released Green Star, which I really like that album. God, I'm looking at like my 100 and I'm like, don't want to talk about them. Nope, don't want to talk about them anymore.
Yeah, so I think Slow came out.
Yeah, Starflyer.
Starflyer 59's record. Yeah, that was definitely my favorite record that year.
That was the year you moved, right? No, Low Tom, that was 2017, right?
Yeah, 2017 is the year I moved. 2016 and 2017 are, I think that I don't remember a lot of what, and I think when we did our previous like look back on the decade, where we kind of hit this time period and we're like, ugh, I don't like any of this stuff. And like, I think that it has that reputation in my memory because it was definitely a time period where I was struggling to find new stuff that I liked, and was really burning myself out on listening to all of the older stuff that I liked. So like 2016 into 2017 are just like, it's a really significant breaking point in my taste in music. And like post 2017, it was just kind of like, I love music. I don't want to not love music. I don't want to not be excited by music. So I'm just going to like go in every direction that I'm like remotely interested. And I think that's where I lose a lot of focus on new music, which doing this show has kind of steered me back towards. Yeah, I don't know. That's my little ad hoc thought on 2016, I guess.
It's so recent history that nobody's going to be like, you forgot this. It's not like a year that's like, an infamy of incredible records.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's going to be, the things that people are going to be like, oh, you forgot that Parquet Courts record. And I'm like, I remember the Parquet Courts record. I didn't like it.
Yeah, big records, but like, yeah, nothing that I cared about. Like, I didn't care about the Hotel Year.
Yeah, I was definitely not a fan of American football already, so I wasn't going to listen to an American football LP2.
Yeah. Yeah, 2016, interesting time. Not a time anybody's like clamoring for us to revisit, but you do have a little bit of clarity after a couple years to be like, oh, that was what was popular? Like, that's what I liked? Because you wouldn't pick that now if you had a full list of everything you could listen to from that year, and you probably wouldn't pick some of that stuff. But
I mean, do we do 5-year retrospectives? Someone will do we're a few weeks out, so this is going to be my zeitgeist prediction. Someone will do a 5-year retrospective on Worry by Jeff Rosenstock. I'll put money on it.
If they haven't already, could have missed it.
It comes out. It came out middle of October.
Oh wow! So let's see if this comes true. This is the first like full on prediction into the zeitgeist that you've ever made. So we'll see. Brooklyn Vegan will be the one to do it. Well, cool. Let's move on to the actual record that we are talking about today, if that's okay with you.
Yes.
All right. We got 2016. I didn't write down the number because I forgot how to do this version of the show.
It doesn't matter.
It really doesn't. But it is the Falcon and their second album, Gather Up the Chaps.
I went to rehab for being too damn high. With you damn motherfuckers in the middle of the night. When I get back, I'm gonna find you guys. Take it to the alley now and make us drink one of the dies. Let's skies are rain of the boys bathed in the drain. And the moon is on its falling, but Sergio's here. Death is gonna call it, but I'm Sergio's here. Do you have the money? Then I wanna get high. And goddamn it, Sergio's here. Do some gambling while he's got some balls.
So, couple stats. Falcon were a super group of Chicago punk bands Like I said, this is their second album and the follow-up to their first album, Unicornography, which was released a decade prior. It was released on Red Scare Industries. The personnel is Brendan Kelly on guitar and vocals, Dan Andriano on bass, Dave House on guitar, and Neil Hennessy on drums. I could not find a producer, so I assume they did it themselves. Naturally, Brendan and Neil are from the Lawrence Arms, and Dan is of Alkaline Trio fame. A little bit of a slapstick reunion as well, because Dan was in slapstick with Brendan. And Dave House is from The Loved Ones, Paint It Black, and his solo career. Dave is not an original member of the Falcon, and in fact...
He weaseled his way in there.
Oh, Dave House. My friend, Dan Andriano.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, the guitarist for Rise Against was the original second guitarist of the band, but he couldn't appear on the Unicornography record. So, like...
Because he's a fucking rock star by then.
That was like 2000. I mean, it wasn't like... Was Rise Against that big at that point?
I feel like Rise Against got big not long after the Falcon, and then just like have been huge ever since.
2006. You know what? That does actually make sense. I do remember hearing like Rise Against on the radio around that time period, so it would have been right before the album came out that he wasn't able to do it. Yeah, that's funny. So let's talk about pre this record feelings on the Falcon. We kind of touched on it on the Patreon, but kind of go reintroduce how did you feel about the Falcon before re-listening to this episode, to this album?
So I loved Unicornography as a young punk, college days, getting into like Dillinger 4 and like being into Alkaline Trio and a little bit into like the Lawrence Arms a little, and generally getting into what we call orgcore or fest punk. Those were prime orgcore years for me. So I loved Unicornography. It was definitely recommended to us by, we're just going to keep shouting him out, but our good buddy Grant McCracken of Bitter Melody Records. We need to honk a horn every time we say his name. Definitely recommended this record to me. Yeah, I listened to it a ton in college. More than any Lawrence Arms record. Like, this was my Lawrence Arms, really, if anything. So, like, I really held really positive feelings towards them, this as a group, and that record for many, many years. Despite not liking most of what I heard from later Lawrence Arms. So, I do remember I remember this record being announced. I remember people saying like, hey, there's going to be a new Falcon record, and being like, oh, that's going to be great. And just basically just being vaguely disappointed with it, I guess. And I guess that's just from, so when we picked this record for this episode, I was thinking like, that'll be an easy record to talk about, even if it's not good.
Yeah,
like,
interestingly, my Falcon experience was pretty different from yours, though. So, like, my earliest Falcon memories go back to Fest 7, which is the first year I ever went to Fest. I wasn't really super familiar with the band's music, but I was aware of them as the, like, oh, it's Dan from Alkaline Trio's, like, other band he did, like, while he was in Alkaline Trio. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Our friend Corey, who is a massive Alkaline Trio fan, really, really wanted to see the Falcon, and I was like, cool, I'll go too. So they were one of the few bands he was like stoked about seeing at Fest that year. So the Falcon were playing at Common Ground. I'm trying to remember if that's what it was called back then. Now I think it's called the High Dive. It may have been the Common Ground. It may have had another name at one point too. I'm not sure what it was being called that year, but back in those days, it was the second largest music venue at Fest. Next to the Florida Theater, which, by the way, that is a massive like difference in size of venues. So Common Ground, I would compare it to if you'd ever been to the Black Cat in DC, it's probably about that size. Or maybe North Carolinians might compare it to the Tremont back in those days, or Amos's. I'd say that's probably, Amos's might actually be bigger. It's longer for sure, but more like Tremont, I guess. So it's not a huge venue. It's like a waist high stage. No, like a knee high stage or like slightly thigh high stage maybe. Still pretty actively used, but because it was the second biggest venue, that's where they put like the next tier down of bands. So the lines that year in general were just absolutely terrible. Like, I don't know that 8 Seconds was being used then. I want to say it wasn't. Or if it was, I never went in there. So I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't think it was. But even like the big Florida Theater venue the line was too big. So the Atlantic had a really bad line that year. Like, it was just awful. It's one of those ones where it's like the line you'd have to get in it for like 3 or 4 bands before the one you wanted to see. And this was Friday. So this was the very first day. And like early in the night too. So like we had gone to see bands, and then like Falcon was the next one we wanted to go see. So we went and got in line. I think we got in line like a whole band before, and we waited and waited and waited. And that line didn't move. It just sat still because the building was already at capacity because everybody was in there to see Lawrence Arms on the rumor of Dan might be there. That's a thing that happens at Fest a lot, actually. So we wait. We get pretty close to the door. We get like 2 or 3 people from the door. Cannot get in. The Falcon starts playing. And we're like, well, we'll just hang out here until somebody leaves. Nobody left. That venue stayed at capacity. Finally, at one point, they let 2 or 3 people in. And then our buddy Corey, he got in. He got to go in. So he ran in and he got all the way up to the stage just in time for them to be like, and this is our last song. And then they play it and they're done. Meanwhile, me and Grant are still outside. We get to come in because everyone's leaving the venue now because the Falcon have played. And we got to watch Ninja Gun.
That's not a consolation prize.
We stayed and watched Ninja Gun. We were like, we waited to get in here. We might as well watch something. So Ninja Gun kind of became a joke for the type of fest band you don't want to see. No offense to that band. No disrespect to that band in general, but...
That's such a classic fest. Like, I'm going to stand here and wait forever and be disappointed either like watching bands before or like not getting in to see a band that you're like super excited to see. And it's gotten better.
Yeah.
The variety of venues that they have been able to expand to has definitely relieved the lines. But there are some that, and I think just like once you've gone through it a few times, you're like, you see that line and you know that venue and you're just like, I'm not getting in there. I'm going to go find something else to do. Like, don't disappoint yourself.
Yeah. So all that being said, at that time, I didn't really know the Falcon, and I probably had only just started really listening to Lawrence Arms. So like, even then, I listened to Lawrence Arms way more than I listened to the Falcon. So it was funny that Unicornography is your Lawrence Arms record, while mine is like Apathy and Exhaustion. Yeah. So, and yeah, there was that like New Noise released it was the very first New Noise Flexi was Hasselhoff Cheeseburger.
Yeah.
And so like we all got our subscriptions to that series, and then I kept one for my year's subscription. And I remember putting that on and being like, well, 1, it's a flexi, so it doesn't sound good. And then 2, it's the song Hasselhoff Cheeseburger off the Falcons, Gather Up the Chaps. So, needless to say, I was disappointed with this record when I listened to it back in 2016.
Grapple down the scaffolding like Hasselhoff, dismantling the greasy metal pieces and the cheesiest diseases. Mangling a cheeseburger while rolling in your feces. I'm a Harry O'Kalisi, dragging on. Overacting after all the audience is gone. I repeat it. I used to catch a beating in the station wagon, seated with my old man, got that feeling. I got in some trouble, wrapped up in a baggie. I get you high and naked if you let me have your aggie. Open up the Himalayas, saying someone shitty brass. Grabbing children in this time to grab it, piling up in layers. All the layers are just kids. Wonder where the grown-ups is. Clarinets, shiny scouts, jealous looks, and everywhere else. Clarinets, shiny scouts, jealous looks, and everywhere else. And I'm shrieking, my self-control is smitten. Sneaking as I care, less and less about the ending. Shrinking, my self-control is smitten. Sneaking as I care, less and less about the ending. And baby, I just wanted to be
So, how do you feel revisiting it?
So I listened to this record twice. And while I hesitate to say I love it, I really enjoyed it. Like, and I don't know if it's just like I'm in like this like weirdly like emotionally vulnerable, like sort of nostalgic, and just like I'm in a new city, and it's like, you know, we're not like past the pandemic, but we're definitely like post pandemic, and just like shows are a possibility again. And like I'm sitting here looking at the street view of Gainesville, because you mentioned the high dive, so I was like trying to place it in my memory and see if it was the one that I was thinking of. And I'm just like I want to be in Gainesville right now. Like, you know, it's just that it's that time of year. It's fall. I have like all kinds of like associations with this sound and this time period and this time of year, like this season. Late summer, early fall in LA does feel a lot like fall in Florida, in Gainesville, and even in North Carolina. So like I think while I was listening to this record the first time, I think I messaged you on like the second or third song. I was like, I wish I was going to Fest.
That's why you messaged me that.
Because it's just like, it's these musicians, like obviously it's these musicians, this kind of songwriting. It's just like a hypodermic needle direct to whatever part of your brain like this sound is tied to, like stores those memories.
Yeah.
So I think that's, that's probably the biggest thing going for it, is that it is so uniformly that style of music and those musicians, and the songwriting is solid and it's performed well, that it's just really satisfying to listen to. But on the repeat listen, like that familiarity didn't that really built on it. Like it was like, all right, now I know these songs specifically, kind of, and listening to it again, like you expect parts and you can kind of sing along with it. So that didn't make me like it less. I think that made me like it more. So I think it is a good record.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a sound that in 2016 wasn't that prevalent. Like orgcore, beardcore, fest punk had moved past this sound and was now like, man, we were even past the Iron Sheik sound at this point too. Like there's a Tender Defender EP that came out that year, and that's probably like the only other thing that kind of fits in that lane. A lot of hardcore and emo primarily that year, or like that Philly kind of lo-fi garagey indie punk sound was pretty strong too. But yeah, coming back to it 5 years later, I do think I appreciate it more too. I mean, I don't know if it is like the lowered expectations, but I liked it more than I did before. But this may be the rare example of you liking it more than me. I mean, I thought it was pretty good. It was all right. It's all right. That's kind of what I came away from. Which before, when I listened to it 5 years ago, I was like, I don't like this. So don't know why it didn't work then, but it works better for us now.
Yeah, I mean, and I think maybe later on down the road, revisiting it, it might lose a little bit of its nostalgic sheen. But I do really, really miss this sound. As much as I would say that this sound was so played out by the time this record came out. But I think that maybe we didn't... You don't know what you got till it's gone. Like we, and I mean this in like maybe a royal we, like the broader punk community, maybe didn't realize that it would evaporate so consistently, like that we would really it would just completely dry up. Other than it's like, well, I can go see Hot Water Music play their recent 3 records and nothing else that I want to hear. Mm-hmm. Or like, yeah, Against Me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, it was pretty much just like only the big names playing the old records. There weren't new bands, there weren't new records really coming out. And even like the big bands were putting out records sporadically.
Yeah. Which, you know, Lawrence Arms are one of those bands that put out records sporadically. You know, they put one out last year, Skeleton Coast, and then Metropole in 2016. No, 2013 or 14. I think that's when that was. So like this was between Lawrence Arms records with years between them. Yeah, this sound has gone. It's just like gone. Like our only like new voice that kind of fits this style is what? Sincere Engineer?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Which, you know, there is tons of valid criticism to be made of like how masculine the orgcore fest punk scene was. Like, you know, it's not like a big jock rock douchebag scene or anything like that. Like most of the dudes who go to fest would self-describe as feminist.
Yeah.
I think so. At least the people that I know from fest, you know, our friends from fest, myself included in our group of friends. But yeah, like it was definitely like dudes in bands, dudes in bands with substance problems. It's very central to the image of a fest punk.
Yeah, it is funny. Like this, Brendan's voice is very nostalgic to me. Like maybe because I don't throw Lawrence Arms records on frequently enough. So like, but it does make me think of specific like points in my life, like driving my, you know, Buick Century with the giant hole in the side from when I wrecked it, and the windows that didn't roll down, and the AC that didn't work, and the tape adapter that I would put CDs in. And so like it puts me in like 2007, 2008, even though this record's not from that year or that time. I'd say this record does fit more with the earlier Lawrence Arms sound than what they were doing at that point, and even what Brendan was doing solo on his like Wandering Birds stuff. Like that sound wasn't as, those records weren't as aggressive as this one was, or at least some of the songs. Like this album is, I don't know, yeah, it's definitely like, they describe it as kind of like the band that they just like throw anything they want to into it, and like they don't really feel like super thoughtful about, or like there's a certain type of Falcon song and they're all about drinking and doing drugs, which I read the lyrics to this record and I was like, yeah, this isn't, I don't like any of the lyrics on this record. Like they're well written, but they're the same theme through the whole album.
So,
and I don't really like drugs and alcohol records.
Yeah, I mean, so the lyrics on this record, from what I could hear and just like judging by the song titles, are very in line with unicornography, and they're in character for sure. They're definitely playing like, they're kind of playing with the men. I feel like they're playing, especially on this record, but even on the first record, they're definitely playing with the idea of celebrity and being a super group. Like I feel like they went into starting the Falcon with the mentality of being like, yeah, we're gonna do a super group and we're gonna be like rock stars, like so we're just gonna like write shitty songs and like just kind of like vent this like the shittiest sides of yourself maybe into songs. And it's not necessarily trying to say like these are good people or good thoughts or good behavior. You definitely have to hold it at arm's length and like recognize the conceit behind it. You're not going to sing along with it like sincerely, I hope.
No, God, I hope not. These are not pleasant experiences to have on this record.
It's like watching Peep Show, or
yeah,
It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. It's like you relate to the characters, but like not in a good way.
They represent that like raw, like you don't truly feel this way, you know, like mentality. Like
it's just the bad thoughts that you have that make you like hiss through your teeth immediately. As soon as you think them, you're like, oh, where did that come from?
Kyle Kinane has like a good bit about that, where it's like I won't do the joke because I don't think it has aged necessarily that well, but like where he like it's basically like he accidentally become racist, or like you think a thing and you're going like, oh no, that's racist. Oh, why did I think that? Like, or like, oh, that's the worst thing that I could have thought in this exact situation, but you would never say it out loud, and you don't feel that way about it.
Yeah.
It's just like your brain just like smashing and free associating like weird shit together. You know, listening to it, I'm like, okay, yeah, it's got that energy, it's got that feeling, it's like it's some fun, attitude to these songs. But at the same time, they didn't really bring their A game. Like, even the Dan and Dave songs aren't like... The Dan song actually gets on my nerves.
Yeah.
It's the melody he chose to do on it. Which track is that? You Dumb Dildos? It has a good...
Which I think might be a Repo Man reference.
Oh, yeah, that line was in that movie. Yeah, that makes a little more sense. But like whatever like he chose, whatever melody he chose, or like the pattern that he chose to sing on the verses in that song, I was like, what are you doing? I just didn't like it at all.
I do remember thinking like, oh, we get like a legit Dan song on this record, because you don't actually get like a Dan song on Unicornography, which was always a disappointment to me. But
yeah.
Like listening to this one, I was like, "Oh, there's a Dan-led song on here. Like this is gonna be the best one." And it's really annoying that it's not. It's really not.
No,
I enjoy the Dave song more.
Yeah, I enjoyed the Dave song more. It's called "If Dave Did It," and they said it's like Dave wrote a Falcon song. Like that's how he wrote that song. And if you read the lyrics, it's like, yeah, that is how these songs go. It's about being drunk and shitty and like a bad boyfriend. And sad. Yeah, I did like the Dave song better than the Dan song, which coming from us, it's something else.
Yeah, I think that it starts off strong. I think the first 4 songs are really solid. They have that energy. I think you kind of like it dips a little bit on Hasselhoff Cheeseburger. Mm-hmm. But
yeah, it does.
But it picks back up again and it stays pretty steady. To the point where I really outright like Glue Factory. Like, I love that song. Like, it might be one of their best songs in the Falcon discography. That's the one with the line that goes, nothing this shitty can last.
It's funny because I don't think it does pick back up. I feel like once you hit Hasselhoff Cheeseburger, then I'm done with it. Like, I don't really care. The Fight of the Rube the Asshole is all right. It's got some good stuff. But it feels like one of the first tracks on the album. Like, the B side of this record has some moments where you're like Sailor's Grave, to me, just sound like the first half of the record. Like, especially, like, The Trash or Sergio's Here. Now, that being said, I do like The Trash and War of Colossus and Sergio's Here. My favorite track on the whole album, though, is the Skeleton Dance, which has like the harmonica slow outro, and like he does like his high fast like type vocal in the first verse, and then on the second verse he does like the low sad voice like that, like which he does in a couple spots on the album. It's the Hasselhoff Cheeseburger song. It reminded me of that Savage Garden song where he's like singing really fast. You know what I'm talking about? The Mocha Chocolate or whatever he sings in that song.
Chicken cherry cola.
Yeah, that one. Or like in the 1 week, the part where he's like looking at Aquabat, like the whatever, find us on the back seat, like that. that whole like fast part. And that's why I'm like, what is this? Like, we didn't start the fire going on over here. The chorus is all right, but I just didn't dig it. And then Dead Rose is real slow, and like I just couldn't get into that one. I do like Black Teeth. I think it picks up at the very end. Black Teeth has like the same ending lyrics as the opening lyrics to The Trash.
Mm-hmm. There's some good, interesting guitar playing on this record, and it's kind of an understated aspect of it because it's not like shreddy solos or anything like that, but it's just kind of like this. There's an interesting, tasteful guitar lead on most songs that isn't quite what you would have expected it. Yeah, it's just a kind of guitar playing that doesn't show up in a lot of these kinds of bands.
No, they're like these weird little, like, The Trash, I noticed it has like this weird, like, almost like ad-libs, like guitar ad-libs in there. Mm-hmm. Or like, then like War of Colossus has this weird reverby, like, post-chorus, like effect. Like, I guess it's kind of a bridge, but it's not like structured that way in the song. And it kind of does that in a lot of places. It's just like, they throw in this thing that's like, what? That wasn't in the beginning of the song. And like, even like Skeleton Dance, which I really love, like it just turns almost into a different song by the end of the song. The songs are jangly. Would that be a way to describe some of the guitar playing on here?
Yeah. Like
they're not like typical like beard punk like riffs. They throw in these like weird, messy like guitar playing. It's a unique style for them. I'm not sure who that is. I mean, I guess it could be. Does Brendan play guitar in Lawrence Arms? Or is Chris?
I feel like it's probably Neil.
Neil's the drummer.
Oh, that's right.
Is it Chris?
That's right, because he played some guitar on Unicornography. He might play some guitar on this record. No, he's only credited with drums.
Yeah, Neil plays drums. So Brendan plays bass. Okay, this is why it sounds so different guitar-wise. So Brendan plays bass in Lawrence Arms, and Chris plays guitar.
Mm-hmm.
So like this is Brendan playing guitar in a band, which maybe that's why it like has this sloppiness to it.
I think Dave probably does play the lead parts.
I could see that. You'd almost never know Dan was on the record though, besides that one song, because the bass does not stand out in any way on this record for me.
I mean, truthfully, the bass playing doesn't stand out very much anywhere in the Alkaline Trio discography. So
that's true. That's fair. Yeah, I've never been like, whoa, listen to his bass playing. It's like, man, I love a Dan song. Yeah.
Not that there aren't memorable Alkaline Trio bass lines, but he's a singing bass player.
Yeah.
He's got to be able to play it.
Right.
While he's singing, so
that isn't like kind of a.
And generally, Matt's songs don't call for anything other than a driving bass line.
Yeah, because Matt's usually doing an interesting like rhythm on his guitar playing.
Yeah, even on like later Alkaline Trio with songs with like a more post-punk new wave influence, like that still kind of calls for like kind of just a steady plunking bass.
Yeah.
Part.
You know what though? I do think Did Dan play bass in Tuesday? He must have.
I think so.
I feel like that's where I noticed Dan's bass playing the most. Those songs feel very bass heavy. Bass, like, forward songs, Did he play bass in Slapstick? Because he had to have, like, chops to do that, too. Yeah, Dan plays bass in Tuesday, too, so. Yeah, but you don't know. You can't really hear the bass on this record. Not very noticeable. The drums, I don't know. They're there. They do their job. They have a couple moments to kind of like shine. Like Sergio's here's got a drum intro, and there's one song that's got a really cool like tom to it. That might be Glue Factory, right after the acoustic guitar intro. I don't know if you like looked at the lyrics to War of Colossus, but it made me think of your All the Living song that I sang in Apophis. He mentions Leviathans and Colossuses and all that in the thing. It's like, he ripped off
nerd shit.
But the song itself isn't that. Like the song itself, like the chorus he said was based on like he was watching like a nature documentary or like saw something in a book with his kid, maybe. I think that's what it is. Something along those lines of like a squid and a whale fighting each other, and they fight each other in like the very bottom of the ocean, in the darkest parts of the ocean, which we never see. So he was like he's imagining that scenario on the chorus to that song, but the rest of the song is just about drinking and drugs.
What cartoon is that? It's a cartoon. I know what you're referencing. It's an 80s cartoon. Samson and Sally.
What?
Oh fuck, that's weird. Did not expect to be thinking about this obscure 80s cartoon.
Samson and Sally?
About a sperm whale that loses its mother. And there's scenes where they like are eating squids, and there's like some really deep sea, like where the really dark. There's a review on IMDb that says, "So what if it's traumatizing?"
Weird. Well, he said it was like a nature documentary that he saw the concept, but that's funny.
Oh,
you just triggered a memory there.
I think I watched that this is so weird. I watched that at the homeschool bookstore that our mom worked at. It was one of the random tapes that they had in the little kids play corner that our little brother would sit and watch tapes on. I watched all of those tapes a million times, multiple Veggie Tales, and like this one random weird old cartoon. I was like a teenager, just like bored out of my mind.
And the last thing I really have written down here is the album cover. It's a little like kind of parody on the Minor Threat album cover, except they're wearing bondage gear.
Yeah.
Funny.
Yeah, that's Brendan Kelly's sense of humor.
Yeah.
Never really
It never clicked with me.
gotten in. But isn't he the nihilist Arby's
Yeah, he's Nihilist Artist.
guy? I mean, that's funny.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've come to the end of my notes. Do you have anything else you want to add?
Not really. I felt good listening to this record. Probably gonna kick off like some heavy orgcore listening over the next few weeks.
Yeah. It is that time of year. Where
And
I
then
think
maybe by the end of it, I'll be like, that's why everyone immediately stopped doing it. Just remember how tired of it we were.
Well, did we win? Remember that?
I think so.
Yeah, I wasn't mad. Even though I didn't like it as much as you did, I wasn't mad. I had to listen to it. I listened to it twice. It's not like I was like, ugh. I mean, it helps it's short, too. Like, it's not a long record. But yeah, that should do it for us. So thank you, everyone, for listening. If you made it this far, appreciate you. Throw us a review or a rating on iTunes. I'd love to know how many subscribers we actually have. iTunes doesn't tell you. The best you can do is go look at, like, your downloads, like, first thing in the morning after an episode goes up. But even then, that's not 100% accurate because everyone doesn't download their podcasts immediately. Some people just stream them, too. But regardless, thank you so much. Everyone stay safe out there. I tell everybody to get vaccinated, but I feel like most of our listeners probably have been at this point. And if not, what are you doing? If you're going to Fest this year, have fun, stay safe. We're not going to be there for obvious reasons. Seems like going to a music festival in Florida didn't seem like a good idea right about now.
There's many reasons that I'm not going.
Yeah, honestly, that's the big reason why I'm not going this year. And that and no one else I know is going. Like, none of my group is going. So, there we are. Thank you so much. Like I said, all the social media stuff up top, it's weird not having anything to end the show on. But here we are.